been here. But when journalists or respected politicians come to us, I always invite them to Donbass, because I think that having an opinion about Donbass on a contact line can be done fairly only by those people who are there, who are walking on that ground. When I became the president in 2019, I made a visit to Mariupol, and at that time in Mariupol we could still hear shots and fire. We could hear the sound when the wind was blowing towards Mariupol, so it was quite close. I know these details. Now I'm aware of this, so I want the people, respected people like yourselves, to be there and to be able to go there. Of course, we do not see a bigger escalation that it has been before. Yes, the number of troops has gone up, but I was talking about this in early 2021, when there were drills of Russian Federation. There was a big build-up. We were supported at that time by the US, but the European friends, they called upon Russia to pull back. I don't think the situation is more intense than it was at that time. At the peak time in early 2021, it was very intense, but such informational attitude towards Ukraine, and it's a question not only to you but to the world. There was no such coverage at that time of Ukraine, and we've talked to the president. We've talked about this. We think that there has to be a balanced approach. I'm not saying that he's influencing American media, they're independent, but the media policy there has to be well balanced. If they want to know what the situation is, that they can come to Kyiv. Do we have tanks on the street? No. But the feeling is, if you're not here, the feeling is when you listen to them in Germany, in France and Lithuania, I'm talking to the president of Lithuania and other leaders, the image that mass media creates is that we have troops on the roads, we have mobilization, people are leaving for places. That's not the case. We don't need this panic. That's a very important moment. I'm not saying that escalation is excluded. We have been talking about this for 8 years now. It has happened already. The escalation did already happen. Part of our territories are already, unfortunately, temporarily occupied. We understand that already. And economically, and I mentioned this to President Biden, I think the US supports that. I said that I started talking to the leaders of the countries and to explain to them that we need to stabilize the economy of our country because of those signals which say that tomorrow there will be war, because these signals were sent by even respected leaders of the respected countries. Sometimes they're not even using diplomatic language. They're saying tomorrow is the war. This means panic on the market, panic in the financial sector. Maybe I'm taking too long to answer the question. Is it okay? It's okay. So how much does it cost to our country? You have to, I want you to understand these things. We need unity of our people. People have to be certain and sure in their army, in their president. The people should trust their government and their special services. We are grateful for any support, but this varied information from varied sources cannot mislead our country, because this raises economic panic. I just give you the example of how much it costs. We have the record-breaking GDP in 2021, record-breaking number. We have the growth. In a short period of time, we had about almost 6.5 of new investments in 2021. But after, I think, after the beginning of this informational coverage, after this change in the information coverage, 12.5 billion has taken worth of investments were taken out of Ukraine, and from our golden reserves, which is the highest in the last 10 years, our country, and you understand, we can't handle this. alone. From the public reserves, from the state reserves, we have to take money in to stabilize our national currency. This is what we're trying to explain. This costs that's a lot. It's very expensive price to pay for Ukraine. And this is the price we're paying for the unbalanced, unreasonable information policy. And that's one of the deep questions, and this is why I'm explaining this when they're saying that we have some misunderstanding. We don't have any misunderstandings with President Biden. I just deeply understand what is going on in my country, just as he understands perfectly well what's going on in the United States. That's it. So we're done with about money. Bloomberg. Do we have Bloomberg here in the room? Yes, please. If you have a question over there, behind the cameras. Thank you. You mentioned money. What is your assessment of the needs of Ukraine in terms of funds? And if we're talking about borrowing, borrowing from which countries and which institutions and when? Thank you very much for this question. This is not just lending. It's a question of financial guarantees. The question is in sending proper, good signals. This can be investments or financial guarantees, which can be provided by a country. It's not even the matter of numbers, just for us to understand how this works. We've talked to the leaders of certain states, of the United States, of Canada. Canada proposed 120 million, and this is the message. This is the signal. I think France will respond. The United States will respond. We asked them for 10 times more than that, and that was our request. I don't know whether we will get the support or not and what amount that will be. But generally, we had a conversation also with the EU. We will be getting the microfinancial assistance. We agreed about 1.2 billion and other funds as well. What we mean is sending the signal of by different countries, the EU, the United States, Canada, by any friends and partners of Ukraine. And I think that for the stabilization of our economy, we will spend, I think about 4 or 5 billion. I'm not expecting anything less than that. So that's the amount of money we need right now. But the question is not in the size of this, but the question is that this is the signal of trust to Ukraine, to the stability of the economy of Ukraine. For example, IMF, their program is higher than $2 billion. This is the signal that we're expecting. And we're expecting for these tranches to come faster. CNN, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving me this question. In your conversations with President Biden, what are you telling him that you need most of all from the United States that it is not doing to help you better confront and deter Russia? What are you asking for that he's not giving you?
Thank you for this question. I have a good memory of the face. I think we met in Donbass, didn't we? And I think you saw it for yourself. You have seen our courageous people. I think you saw that we all want peace, but we stand ready to protect our country, because I'm not just the president. I'm the husband, I'm the son, I'm the father. We have things that we want to protect, and that's why I'm discussing these questions in detail with President Biden. I want everyone to be on the same page as where I am. So They don't need to love Ukraine as well much as I do. You have your own country, but at least I want you to get to grips with what we are facing and the risks and the details. This is why the questions that we have been discussing with the President, by far not the first time, we discussed what are the questions after the event. And this is the question not only to President Biden, where I don't have any separate questions for him personally. This is Europe and many other countries who are talking about this. So there are countries who still mention there are some preventive measures that can be introduced to make sure that Russia doesn't escalate. What we mean is that there should be security guarantees. When we are talking about NATO, we should go deeper into detail. I know that some members of NATO don't like us going into this detail, but we want to have something specific. We need to have something that we can count on. First of all, security guarantees, if we were talking about NATO, and the second is the level of our army. No matter when we get into NATO or whether we will be there at all, nothing in this case depends on us. Not everything depends on us. We have to develop our own army. We have to protect ourselves. But we understand right now perfectly well that if we are not part of NATO, then we are on our own in terms of protecting ourselves. And when you're on your own, protecting yourself, when you are single-handedly facing a very difficult country in front of you, then you ask a question, why is these sanctions applied after the fact? Is it, does this pertain to Ukraine? No, I don't think what will happen after this. Will there be a full-fledged war? Then why do we need sanctions after it starts, after the beginning of the war? So it means that these sanctions are not designed for our country, to help our country. Because this is to stop the full-fledged aggression towards the European Union, but this cannot be done at the expense of our country. That's not the way to do it. We had 15,000 deaths in the war, and many countries of the world discussed the sanctions which will be applied only after the fact. And I'm being very honest, and that's what I mean. So give us the reasons. Okay, we're not in the NATO, then okay, tell us you're not in the NATO. Tell it openly. We will never get there. And and I'm addressing this to many members of the alliance. Some of them do say that. Some of them are afraid to say that. Some come here, we shake hands very warmly, and they say us, if it hadn't been for that and that country, we would have surely supported you. Others say, when everyone supports you, we will support you too. Why do we need to talk about the future? We have risks here in the present. The next question, channel 4, over there, second row.
President, you have thanked the British government for providing some anti-tank weapons, but what about the fact that London is a centre for the laundering of Russian money? Are you concerned that that will undermine any sanctions, and what do you want the British government to do about that?
Very complicated question. I think those people who launder their money in London, they launder them not only in that capital city, but in all capitals where there is posh real estate or the business they like, or historically money was taken out of Russia. And I think it's not only Russia. The former Soviet Union republics have a relation to this. Ukraine has a relation to that. Belarus, Kazakhstan. I don't want to offend everyone. That's why I said that it has something to do with all these countries, because oligarchs Well, there is such chapter in the history of the post-Soviet reality. After the Soviet Union disappeared, countries became independent, and apart from independence, these countries received independence, but together with independence they received the oligarchy. And I will be honest with you, we are actively combating this process in Ukraine, and we have achieved quite a result. These risks may be even of higher priority than if it hadn't been for the escalation, this would be priority number one. So after escalation and economy, third one is combating oligarchy, and the legislation will resolve that. We have passed the law, but I don't quite understand how can I help London. I think this is the question of the domestic nature of Great Britain. This is about their domestic decision. I mean, I can only say when we get rid of our own oligarchs, we can share our experience with other countries. CBS News, first row, please.
President Zelensky, Holly Williams from CBS News. Thank you very much. I just want to go back to your first answer, and just thinking specifically about the Russian threat. What is it that you know that President Biden doesn't know?
Thank you for this question. Something that we know that President Biden doesn't know. As a president of an independent state, may have its own, I may have my own secrets, just like the President of the United States. I think we have very open relations, and our secret services are sharing lots of information with each other. But you have to feel the pulse on the day-to-day basis. You see troops coming in and coming back and withdrawing and pulled back, because there's different types of information that is intercepted. We understand how these special troops are working under disguise. They're working in the Donbass and many oblasts of our country. I don't want to sow panic, but we are handling this with our forces. I would like to give you the example. If you look only at the satellite, you will see the increase of troops, and you can't assess whether this is just a threat or just attack or simple rotation. So our professional people, they look deeper into it. We see how they change clothes, how they put the tent, that several brigades came on the border, but we can see that there is no one there. On the slide, they have taken the people back out. So it's just only psychological. They want to make believe that they're there, and that happens closer to the big meetings, Normandy 4, the Minsk agreement. So they're trying to build up the psychological pressure. So and we do see these things happening, and this is why we clearly understand. Remember, we had the build-up of troops in 2021. There was the peak of these drills, and there was a signal sent by Russia and some European countries that it turned out that Russia started to pull back the troops, and then it was confirmed by many mass media and the intelligence, but our people saw that the army wasn't pulled back, they would pull back several steps and then bring them back. And we saw it at that time, and we said that in the early 2021 this was done just for the show, for their internal constituency, that the drills are over, we're not threatening anyone and we're pulling back. But in fact it didn't happen at that time. So I think that these are the things, these are the details that we see and we better understand. Sky News, I know that you have your crew somewhere close to the front line, so question is for you.
Suspect that you are talking down the threat of an imminent invasion just to preserve your economy, and actually the Americans are right. It is a real possibility that that can happen imminently. Is that what's really going on here?
Thank you for this question. It is very strange that I'm being suspected of something. I think in my life I haven't done anything to be suspected of things. I think you mistake me for another president of Ukraine. I think, first of all, I'm the human being. That first of all should be the human being, and the second comes the economy. And for me, the question of the possible escalation is not less acute as for the United States and other partners. I'm not managing the country just like as in your film, Don't Look Up. This was we're looking up, we do understand what's happening, and we're talking about this. We're talking about this with our people. But we have been in these situations for 8 years, so we shouldn't be only looking up, we're also looking on the ground. And for us it's an important question. We may lose the economy of our country. People come first. The imminence of threat or the probability of threat is there. In 2021 it was the same. In 2020 it was less. In 2019, after the Normandy war, it was even less than that. Day before yesterday there was a meeting of the Normandy 4 advisors. I think so there was a meeting. So indeed, so if it's not just a political theater and this is very serious, it means that these are steps towards the dialogue, towards peaceful resolution of this process. This is why I think this points to the fact that we have to be very careful in how we speak out every day, every minute, when we are trying to say that the war will happen tomorrow. We can't say that the war will happen tomorrow. Please believe me that the war will be by the end of February, or as they said in November, that the war will happen by the end of the new year, and then they said Happy New Year, but we have new information. The war can happen in January, in February. Yes, it may happen. Again, unfortunately, and let's just put 3 dots here, but not just one full stop, and say, yes, for sure it will happen. Because we understand what's happening to people then. These are courageous people, but the courageous people have to protect their country and keep on working at the same time and keep on bringing up and nurturing their children, because this is life.
News, так, ось другий ряд праворуч, будь ласка.
NBC News, the third row to the right.
Bradley from NBC News. I'm just wondering, we see so much of what the Russians are doing in terms of increasing their troop presence on the borders. What is it that you are doing? How are you preparing for what everyone is describing, except for the Ukrainian government, as an imminent attack?
Окей. Да. Дуже дякую.
Thank you very much. How we should act? we should have no panic. We have a powerful army. We have to arm our armed forces. They have everything, but it's never so as much as we can provide considering the capacity of our economy. This is about the economy again. With a powerful economy, you can increase the equipped state of your armed forces, give them a better payroll, they need it, and we're increasing their wages and salaries because they actually put their lives at stake. 15,000 people perished in this war, and you know that. I think that we are having this situation when we fully trust in our armed forces. They are not novices, they're not rookies. It is a serious body of soldiers. For the NATO level, I think that we are not worse than any NATO nation in that respect. We have the same level, we are on a level because we have the lessons learned, the combat experience, the experience of losing their friends. They protected their state, defended, they shoot back, they fight back. I have to say this here because they have proved that they were good in Afghanistan, military reconnaissance force, 1,000 people evacuated in a very experienced fashion. So we have to do everything to make our army stronger. God forbid we have this big war, the morale of our people will also be a defense asset. And people have to work for our state, for its economy, and for our armed forces, which are prepared to defend the state. There's a question from BBC, the second row, please.
Mr. President, I wanted to understand directly from you then. I understand, of course, this is a conflict that has gone on for many years. I understand that the threat from Russia ebbs and wanes, it comes and it goes. But could you tell me directly your assessment now of the threat from Russia to Ukraine? And a further question, if I may. Given that Russia is making its view extremely clear about Ukraine's possible membership of NATO, I wondered from your perspective, is the theoretical membership of NATO at some point in the future a goal, an ambition that's worth fighting for?
Дякую вам.
Thank you very much. Well, a proxy war, and this is the proxy threat, or threats in plural, threats to Ukraine and other countries, also in plural. We are not the only neighbor to the Russian Federation. We are not the only neighbor to the temporarily occupied territories. So with a full-scale war, there won't be just a war with Ukraine or against Ukraine or just in the territory of our state. This is going to be a proxy war, infops, cyber ops. We are trying to protect our sites, but we can understand where it is launched from, the Russian Federation, another destination, so to speak. Now, if we discuss war with the result of firing, this is one kind of war. This is the 20th century war. We are having a different type of war right now, and we are in this situation. We've learned to protect ourselves, and we are very grateful for the assistance. But we have learned to live with this and develop with this. And that's what I was talking about. But the threat is imminent. The threat is constant. The proxy threat I was discussing, it can be any kind of strike, and there can be any kind of grenade being exploded, and the secret services work to this effect. There are many things, subversive things, many sites. I don't remember exactly, but recently we had this something of the kind, but we have learned to protect ourselves, to defend ourselves. This is our life. We have to lead, taking it globally as a global issue that we are facing, protection of human life. There we can raise the issue of NATO membership, the second part, the latter part of your question. And of course, the security guarantees. It's not being defended by somebody else's army instead of our own, but we are talking about preventive sanctions. I talked with the president about that and many interlocutors. NATO is not about war. NATO is about sanctions. We have to find some preventive measures. NATO is one of such sanctions. If it is not NATO, then point to some other security guarantees. Tell me about those safeguards. One interesting thing, we keep hearing this powerful voice from Germany. No hard feelings, mind you, but they are telling us diplomatically that, for example, if tomorrow we have this build-up on the part of the Russian Federation, we can forget about the Nord Stream 2. How should I interpret this? And here's why I have this reaction. Yesterday, when there was no such discourse on the in-depth escalation this year, the build-up, and we discussed the Nord Stream 2, they would say, if it is launched, they said, Ukraine will get some security guarantees, energy security guarantees. We discussed that with Germany, with the United States, with the EU, the sort of guarantees we could expect. And we discussed that with the European partners, and the European partners in their turn had to discuss that with the Russian interlocutors, the transit of gas for 10 to 15 years to be prolonged at least, to be renewed for this period with a contract to that effect, with the reversed supplies from our European partners. Now we can see how the discourse is changing there. Nobody is talking anymore about energy security for our state. They say if we have the build-up, there's no Nord Stream 2 then. Well, that's the proxy war for you. I understand that people have their concerns, they have their challenges, they have their troubles and interests, which we call national, but you can also have this fellow feeling for other peoples. So when we are in NATO, well, it does not depend on us when we will be there, unfortunately. Is this a question? A request?
Greenwich from 7 News. What more could major non-NATO allies, countries including Australia, be doing to assist or support Ukraine at this stage?
Натиски партнери.
Thank you very much for your question. Unfortunately, I have to say that we are grateful for the support already rendered, and I was talking about the financial safeguards. Don't interpret this as some kind of lending facility to stabilize our economy. But we need stabilization for our economy with investments, FDIs coming from some country of origins. This is not for the sake of mere development, but if somebody believes in our stability, in our future, can lend their helping hand, not instead of actually undermining our position. And they will come in maybe for 10, 15, 100%. It is too early to expect for the income. The income is, the profit is for the future. The income is in the attitude, talking of Australia and other partners. you're welcome. Invest in our country. Please demonstrate that you believe in Ukraine. In Ukraine, you trust. And talking of NATO, I'm not supposed to discuss NATO in every single answer I'm given here, but we can see no alternatives for the purposes of security. There are other countries, if they are prepared to offer some security option or defense option or some other format of alliance to provide assistance, real powerful assistance at a particularly difficult moment. We're prepared for this. We are working on such options. This is very important, you understand. So with the NATO, I dropped the line somehow, but NATO nations, what will they do? Just to excuse this example, but this is just an example. We are in this difficult situation presently, and that's why you're all here. And we are very grateful to you for your attendance. But if the war happens, tell me please, which army of which country will be prepared to defend us? No army, no country. It's not going to happen. And this is very scary for NATO, because if Ukraine is in NATO, and then, God forbid, something evil happens, they will have to defend their member. And this is a very serious challenge for NATO. But let me tell you this. Some European countries think along those lines, and they count on having no risk with Ukraine as a member. But if there is this big war we have all been referring to here, and the war starts, it will be also at the borders of some NATO nations, for certain. And we can expect some provocations there, because some of those countries used to be the Soviet republics in their day. And are you sure that, can you be certain that if the smaller, in terms of size, NATO members say that we are having a war at our borders, are you convinced that they will be protected, defended, or somebody's going to die for their freedom and statehood? Wall Street Journal, the first row, and to my left. You can see that they need it, right?
Thank you so much for having us here. We just heard part of your speech to the foreign ambassadors, and we heard you tell them to keep calm. Obviously, that's your message here as well. I'm wondering, beyond just the talk of imminent war, if you're trying to, if you're at all concerned about some of the divisions that are starting to come to the surface within NATO members, especially as they talk about the imminence of war, and then also their differences start to become more vocal. So if you can talk about that. And if I may, just one more question. U.S. Secretary of State Tony Blinken last week talked a lot about the domestic political issues that you're facing right now and some of the struggles. We saw former President Poroshenko in the streets just a few days ago. Can you talk about how concerned you are about that issue and how it's challenging you to confront this threat? Thank you.
The biggest risk for Ukraine and the biggest risk for sovereignty of our state, and here we are united. I can tell you this frankly. We are united with all our partners, the EU, the United States, the UK, NATO nations. Now, I cannot discuss some specific detail along those lines. you understand. But what is very important is that the biggest risk is to fail to hold the country together. This is the domestic destabilization inside the country. This is the weakest link, or the most dangerous prospect for Ukraine. I'm talking about economics here, but this is just one of the factors. The unity of leadership, trust in the president of Ukraine, trust in the incumbent president, and understanding on the part of other politicians in this country that they are former presidents or future presidents, but they're not incumbent presidents. This understanding, wise, honest, and legitimate, makes our country united and strong. And if we are united as a people, with the army, with this stable leadership in this country, the escalation risk coming from the Russian Federation will be considerably diminished. We remember developments in 2014, 2015 in our country. The lack of control of the situation inside the country in terms of legality, the law enforcement bodies, public order, that can lead to escalation. This is the highest probability situation when we have some actions from or on the part of the neighboring country. What you see here is one of the risks. It is caused by the political activities of some politicians, some representatives of the political elite of our country that are making their own policies, and they are doing their own public relations. That's all. I did not see any disturbances in our streets. We can see no disturbances, and we can say that what is happening, when it's happening, for instance, there's no, somebody is on a leave, and everything is calm and peaceful in the streets of Ukraine. When somebody comes back, that somebody, people come to the presidential office or block the parliament for that matter. But it doesn't matter whether we have this COVID pandemic and they have to vote for very urgent appropriation to deter the pandemic. They don't care. I'm very happy that I have no political background. At first I was shocked. They don't care, just don't care what is happening in the country. There's a war, we can deal with it. Business, we can deal with it. But on an everyday business, they do things using their agendas and trying to present a schism in our country and a division. And I wouldn't discuss this topic at length. I would like to discuss the things that interest you, because I don't like to talk about the past. Let's bygones be bygones. But I think that they are a product of our legacy, the Soviet legacy. They represent the oligarchs, tycoons. Unfortunately, they can have business. They have my generation worked hard to have a business, and that's kind of people who defend their state. They did not privatize anything that exists when the time of disintegration of the USSR came for pennies. We made our own fortunes in every penny of it, and we're defending the state, my generation. Let's talk about This Deutsche Welle, the second row at the center. While you are approaching the mic, please put one question so that as many people can put a question as possible.
Deutsche Welle, I would like to ask, you've mentioned Nord Stream 2 before, but there's another discussion about Germany, and that concerns delivery of weapons. Germany is providing helmets and field hospital, but it has categorically refused to send any deadly weapons or other military equipment, and it has also had a role in other procurements from other countries. How do you assess Germany's role in this conflict?
I cannot say that Germany is to blame, but because there are several steps and several platforms. Once Germany supported Ukraine, supported on numerous occasions from the very beginning with the reforms, with the Normandy formats. When the war started, Chancellor Merkel made very important steps to resolve the situation. She had contacts with the Russian president to that effect, and I had a special relationship with her. That's the way I see it. And presently we had this meeting. My head of office, Andriy Yermak, reported that France and Germany supported Ukraine trying to start negotiating after such a long break or interval in any kind of talks. This is one direction. There's another one where I think that Germany can do a lot. A lot depends on Germany. This is consolidation and the alliance for support of Ukraine. This is the vision, not just in words, but in deeds, as to the membership for Ukraine in the EU. And you should be proud that your state has such a weight and such an influence over the other EU members because of the economy historically. So there are many answers to the question why, but this is on the one hand. On the other hand, you have to understand that we are always aware of all this. We are aware of your influence over these countries. That's why we expect you to help us in that area. For the lethal weapons, this is not the last and the only example, or this is not the first and not the only example. Let me give you another one. With the energy collapse this year, and we had great difficulties, very grave difficulties, because of the blockage of the coal supplies, the troops around us, the panic, no purchasing from Russia, and our coal being mostly in the temporarily occupied territories. And what we have in the territory, we would bring it in from the United States by sea. We needed natural gas because our own wasn't sufficient for that. We know what Russia did in that situation. We are aware of the details. But at that point, we were approached by Moldova, and they needed assistance. Maya Sandu, president, said that our people are freezing. They talked to Russia. There was some kind of concession. And when the EU was supposed to provide all the support for Moldova to demonstrate that a new, young and energetic president enjoy that support with the European vision, seeing Moldova and the EU, but they started thinking about it with the red tapes and some wheels within wheels being considered, but they are freezing now. And we gave him what we could, as much as we could share. We gave her what she asked for. We did not expect things that would happen 2 or 3 months later, and we did it. So this is about weapons. It is very important to help when there's a need for this help, a definite need. This is a serious signal issue. This is a serious challenge presented. I don't wish that Germany or the people of Germany, I don't wish that you feel in your own experience the same thing around your borders like what we have. I would never wish this for anyone. And I once told Chancellor Merkel about the Nord Stream 2. I told her, I understand that this is business, this is a lengthy process and so forth, but just imagine that you have those troops at your borders, at your doorstep. Would you arrange a Nord Stream 2 with them in that situation? So where's this contact line like we have in the Ukrainian Donbass for business and reality? Where's the contact line? So I do not wish that you have the same situation. We'll get out of this with flying colors, I'm sure, but I would never wish this for you. But if you have been in trouble like this, we will help you. We'll be there for you, I can assure you.
Fox News, closer to the line here.
Mr. President, thank you very much for having us, and thank you very much for taking my question. I want to talk about 2 individuals, 2 questions. Number 1, President Biden. You've been critical of what some of the things the U.S. has been doing. You've been supportive. What is he doing wrong? What is he doing right? What do you want to see from him? And the second person, we've been in this long session, and I haven't heard this name once. It's kind of central to everything. Russian President Vladimir Putin. What does he want? What does he want to get out of your country? How can you deal with him? What kind of a threat is he? So, President Biden and Russian President Putin. Your thoughts?
First of all, I would like to say that I don't want Ukraine to be the result of the agreement between President Biden and President Putin. President Biden recurrently assured me, and yesterday as well, that nothing will be decided behind Ukraine's back about the destiny, about the current and the future of our country. This is a very respected position, and I do believe that it is the case. President Biden doesn't owe anything to Ukraine. I'm not being critical of President Biden. I'm being critical of anyone and myself as well. We live in the present day, we fight in the present day, we survive in the present day, we want to bring back our territories, we want to stop the war. I'm not being narrow-minded. I see these things. I see these things in the broad daylight. We've lived here for 8 years in this. We know Russia for much longer than 8 years. We know that. And there are people who support us on the other side as well. And this is why many of these doors I'm talking about are closed. But as a president of Ukraine, I need to knock on all the doors, the doors of all leaders, and propose different formats, propose different platforms for agreements. Not only the platforms where we can get the result, but at least to start the talks, because when people are talking, there are no places for weapons there. That's a good start. So what the President Biden can do, I don't know whether he can do. I would like to believe he can do that, and that he will succeed. And that is to have a negotiation platform between the US, Russia, and Ukraine. At least this would be a parallel process. I'm not saying to choose between this and the Normandy format, but again, we have to knock on all the doors, talk to each other, look for common things, start the dialogue, and stop for a minute and talk about the humanitarian things, talk about NATO, about risks. Some want to go to NATO, some don't want to be in NATO, but what do you propose as instead? How do you ensure energy security for Ukraine? These are related things, related questions, and I would like very much for President Biden, and I would like that, and he knows that. Each time we talk, I'm proposing different steps that